Thanks for tuning in. What we talked about today was our wives as the object of our affection. And something that stuck with me as we had this conversation was that we need to evaluate how we see our wives, but also we need to let her know that how we see her and figure out the best way. And that may include a conversation of asking her how she best receives our affection.
Yeah, we also talk about practicing saying out loud what it is that we love and admire about our wives and getting out of our head just that revolving idea of what it is and actually saying it to her. And the more we do that, the better we can be at it, the more often we can get it done. And hopefully the better she'll feel about it. So for the whole entire conversation, keep listening.
Like many of our episode topics, they start with something that we may not be so good at or we may need to improve on. And this one is not any different. Um, so Brian, I was telling Brian because he's my best friend, but I love my wife and I think she's amazing. And many people, probably most people I know that, but she doesn't always know and or feel that because I just don't tell her or show her in the way that she would best receive.
Mm.
Um, so we talk about being the object of our affection, like she is, like I think she's amazing. Um, and it's not in a obsessive, over the top, like unhealthy way. It's just well, I mean, to me, you can objectively object, but I just I I think she's great, but I just don't let her know. So I'm gonna be done with my rant. And what do you think about when you think about like the object of our affection or how we as husbands can see our wives?
Uh, I think I, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think the same with most things, I tend to internalize it, right? So there, and my wife will tell you this, there are often times where she will catch me like just staring at her, right? Um, you know, hate to see her go, but love to watch her leave, right?
Heard you.
um, but it's not purely a physical thing. Like I admire the way she handles the household, right? I admire the way she handles me, right? Like when I get out of line with something, like she's able to just talk about it, right? And just state how she feels about something and state her disappointment in something without making me feel like I'm a moron, right? So there's a lot of things that go into her being the object of my affection. But like you said, I probably rarely have that specific sort of conversation with her to let her know how much I admire her and more specifically like why I admire her. So that needs to be a thing. I don't know why I don't do that though. I if I think about it a little bit in this moment, I guess kind of piggybacking on what you said, it feels almost uncomfortable. And I'll try to explain that, right? If we don't know how our wife best receives this information, right? It might feel like a failure to us to deliver it in the wrong fashion, right? Because if she's to receive it and responds in a manner that's like kind of like shrugging it off,
Hmm.
that you said something like that, right? then you might feel as a man like, well, why did I even say anything? But that's it's your wife. There's really no excuse to be shy or like afraid of that reaction, right? She might
Right.
just be doing because she's not used to hearing it from you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, all right. So I'll ask you this: how else do you, I guess, define how you see your wife? Because I kind of like went on a little rant and named a couple things, but for you, like what sticks out in your head?
Um, so let me ask you. So what you're asking me is how do I define like
Well,
the things
what
that
is
I
it?
admire or like what do I
What,
admire about her?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, it's like specific examples.
Sure.
Um, basically the things you said for sure, like how she handles me and my just dumb stuff that I do sometimes, right? Or
Yeah.
even disagreements, right?
Mm,
If we don't see eye to eye at first, like having that conversation, but not like berating or belittling, just like really in it to become better for the like that the both of us are better. Um, I think she's beautiful, right? So it's just like that is there. So like I'm trying to go beyond physical because it's assumed, but at the same time, like that needs to be said or
right.
shown. And I'm not so good at that. Um, I love that she works hard. I love that she is a boss. Like she literally is hired out as a contractor to come and run things. Um, and I love how she balances all that eh, and like everything she manages at home too.
Mm,
So, I mean, we share different things, but like the house would run a lot different if I was over everything in the house, right? And I understand that. And I try to let her know. Um, so it's kind of those things. Um, and just knowing that I can count on her and know that she's gonna be there. I mean, I guess the ring kind of says that, but not really. Not
mm,
with, relationships that I've seen and people that I've coached. Like it's not always good to assume that, but I know I have that comfort level. And um, her voice and just her belief and wanting to get to know God more. Um, so I mean, there's a lot. There's all that to say. There's a lot that I could say that I'm not saying, and the more that I'm saying it, I'm realizing I'm not saying it.
mm. To her.
Yeah, to her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but I was thinking when you asked, oh, did you have something to say?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
I'll wait.
because you said, like, why don't we do it? And then I wrote down, like, was it modeled for us?
Mm,
Have we seen someone, have we seen a husband or has someone pulled us aside and said, hey, like, you should do this and this is how? This will help better this will just help her as a person. Like, this will edify and lift her up, you
yeah.
know? And no, like, I had my parents have been married almost 50 something years. Is that real? 40 something years? I don't know. A long time. Um, but like as you were talking, I was thinking like, have I seen this modeled, with my dad and, other people of that I would see as I was growing up, and then even now. And I don't think so.
Hmm. So that raises the question then, is it private or public or both? Right? Is this something that, and I know how I know how this makes me feel right out of the jump, right? But just to pose the question, is this something that should typically happen in private? Is it something that should typically happen in public, right? Or is it a combination of the two? For me, I think it's a combination. Um, but I also feel like there are certain parts of our marriage that, right, especially when we are like loving on our wives, we feel like we need to keep private, right? Like especially if I'm thinking if we're in a multi-couple scenario, there it feels like there are times where if I were to love on my wife in that manner, that I might catch flack from the guys. But I don't think that's real.
Yeah, I was about to say, what if it's a couple set, like if it's a multi-couple setting, to me that could be a little interesting as far as like why would they give you slack for Lebanon? And then if so, why do we let it affect us?
Right. Well,
Because
that's
our wife is our forever.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like it's if they are giving you slack about it, it's probably more or less because they don't do it,
Yeah.
right? And they're like trying to pull you back down, right? Like the whole crab in the pot. Like, no, you're
Mm-hmm.
not. Let's get back down here.
Right.
Yeah. Um. So that's the only thing that I could really put to that. But there's I'm sure there's other reasons we might not do it. But that was the first thing that came to mind. I don't know, man. That's
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I think it's a mixture because there are different ways you can say things in private and in public, but it can still be around the same topic. Like obviously, there are certain things within a marriage that go when you are talking about physical traits or physical attributes that you may say in public that you would not, you may say in private that you wouldn't say in public. Right. Right.
right.
So thinking of that, but really I don't see, and if it's a way you show her that she's the object of your affection is more of a physical thing, just like non-sexual touch, right? um
Hmm.
you know there may be, if you're in a mixed company, if you're around kids, um some PDAs are a different level to certain parents, so those things you may consider, but most of the time, uh whatever you could say to her, I would say you can say in private or in public.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I say more in public than I do in private, and I probably say more when she's not in earshot than when she is.
Oh, I'm putting you on the spot. Are you ready?
Yep, that's what we're here for.
What's one thing you would want to say to her, and how would you say it? Say it right now.
Wow, there's so many things. That's hard. Okay, I would say currently speaking, I love how what would overwhelm me, you seem to just conquer it, cool, calm, and collected. So whether it be a bunch of last minute things that pop up or a bunch of um, coordinating with people for travel, which is what's on my mind right now, like you just do it and it's flawless, and and you consider everyone.
Mm, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I would have to say the first thing that jumps out for me about my wife is I love how when I am struggling with something, she allows me to just, for lack of better words, sink into her, right? She sort of envelops me with her caring, right? By listening and trying to understand what it is I'm going through. And because I am who I am at the moment, it's not so much just listening, but her actively trying to pull out of me what it is that I'm going through. And it helps me to get it out, but also helps me to understand it myself as I have to explain it to her. So for that, I love my wife. And so the reason I wanted to do that is I think, like most things, if we become better practiced at, you know, saying these types of things and actually voicing them and not just having it trapped in our head, like the idea, like, oh yeah, she's really good at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just thinking about it, you might not think all of the words. You just kind of have this idea of a situation, right? And you're not necessarily diving into it. You're just kind of you've got this ball of the situation kind of like floating in the air, and
Mm-hmm.
you're
Right.
the situation, right? Like, man, I like to think about that situation, right? And then it kind of goes away. But if you really dive into it and specifically bring out what it was or what it is that your wife does or who she is, and you verbalize that, it becomes easier to do that in the future, in my opinion, anyway.
No, practice definitely makes it easier. Wow, that was good. That's a good exercise. I need like a reminder in my phone to ask me that question throughout the week. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about how do we so we're thinking about what to say verbally, right?
Hmm.
What are some what are some other ways to let her know that we see her?
So I feel like we've brought this topic up before. How do we see her? How do we let her know? I, the funny thing is, I thought about this either yesterday or 2 days ago. Uh, just random flowers, like you said you do.
Hmm.
Um, I think I'd like to do that more, and I think I've been using the excuse of our debt journey not to do it.
Mm.
Like that's not a need. They're just going to die in a couple days. Like, why would I do that? Well, I know why I would do it. Why I should do
Sure.
it. Not doing it. So that's one way. I know I've said in the past, right? Like the little games that we play with each other,
Hmm.
right? You know, sneaking a little bit of physical affection, in the kitchen or something if the kids are in the other room, right? Which we get caught all the time, but whatever.
Right. Caught, not caught, you know.
Yeah. Um, so that's the first thing that jumps in my mind. Things of that nature.
Yeah, for sure. I think all of those are good. Um, but to take it to the next level is actually having a conversation. Um, if you haven't already, or even a check-in, like with your wife, like, hey, like I want you to know that I see you.
Mm.
One, do you feel like I see you? I mean, because I feel like you are the object of my affection, but I might not be doing it the best, or I want to start showing you how I see you. Is there a way that you receive it? Or how would you like if I did, like, give some examples? And then that way, instead of her being like, the traditional, if I tell him it doesn't mean as much, or why should I have to tell him how to, you know, those type of things to debunk
Mhm.
that, come with some examples. Or you could say, what is like the base level that, you know, you would like for me to show you affection so I can build off of that.
Yeah.
Um, so those are some ideas.
Yeah. So I think this is a good point to have the conversation of, does it feel to some men by having that conversation that, you know what, now I am basically admitting my failure. And that's an uncomfortable space to be in. Right. So, which is the whole point of this podcast, right? We understand ourselves that we fail as husbands in some areas, right? Our wives are still with us, so we're not
Right.
failures, but there are some areas we could be better at or better in. And by having these uncomfortable or difficult situations, at least you'll know where you stand. Um, but I feel like there might be this area where, is she going to think less of me because I'm asking for help in this area, right? Does my wife just expect me to know to do this or how to do this? And if I go to her and admit, hey, listen, I don't think I'm serving you well enough in this area. Help me to be better. Is she just going to be like angry? Like, all right, well, now, I see that you're finally admitting it, but I shouldn't have to tell you how to do it.
I I think it would be hard if we use those exact words. I don't
Hmm.
think I'm serving you well in this area. I don't think I'm serving you well when it comes to showing you how much I care about you, or showing you how much what I see about you, or showing you all the things that I observe. Like if you start with, I don't think I'm serving you well with, I think that will dissipate any, that'll bring the walls down, any angst in that. Um, but at the same time, the point of your question is that vulnerability of, she may not receive what I'm saying, how I'm giving it. Like she may see my weakness and be like, why are you weak in that area, basically? And I
Yeah.
think that is the quintessential thing about vulnerability. Like someone could definitely crush you while you come to them in that space. So I think it's always a thought, but most of the time it works out well. I would say basically all the time in your marriage, it works out well to come in that vulnerable state.
Yeah. And I think what I'm attempting to do is pull the fear off the table.
Mm,
Right. Yeah. So men, just generally speaking, if you had to take a flight and it's only you and the pilot, you discover that the pilot is unconscious. Do you just let the plane go down or do you try to fly the plane? Right.
right.
And so it's the same thing in a marriage. If we know that there's something wrong that could break our marriage, whether we know how to deal with it or not, do we just let it go? Do we just let it break the marriage, or do we do what we need to do, as uncomfortable as it may be? Do we try to make those fixes or make those repairs?
I mean, that's good. I think that's a perspective shift, right?
Hmm.
We'll be like, oh, well, that's life and death. Well, this is life and death of your marriage.
Yeah.
So if you think of it that way, It might be easier to jump in. I like that analogy.
Well, that's all I got.
Just drop it. Drop the pen. We out.
Yep.
Um, no, I think that was good. Walking through how to make we just want to make sure that our wives know how amazing we think they are.
Hmm.
Um, because it's good for her to know that. If nothing else, knowledge is power. But otherwise, who wouldn't want their person that they're spending their life with to tell them how they see them and how amazing they think they are?
Yeah. And then the ability to watch her walk around in that confidence.
Yeah, that's huge.
Now that's all I've got. But hey guys, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to invite you to continue this conversation. You can always reach us over on Instagram, searching Marriage is Tougher. You can also hit us on the website or Facebook, and we will respond to all of your questions, inquiries, and requests to be a guest on the show. So if that is something that you desire, please remember to do so. Make sure you also like our episodes wherever you find them on YouTube here, and make sure you subscribe so you get all this goodness as soon as we upload it in your brain.